good evening, and wherever the sun may find you. My name is Walt, and this is Coffee and Concepts with Keystroke Medium. It's been a couple of shows now, and I'm still trying to play with that intro. In any case, this morning I am sucking the remainder of a Sumatra blend, which has been lately really my favorite. It's a really balanced coffee, a dark roast, and I really love playing in this kind of playground. Josh Hayes saying, "Bring on the brew," and William Joseph Roberts, "Morning, y'all." Thank you very much for joining us for our latest installment. I just wanted to take a moment and go over another rare coffee that you don't really see too often unless you ask for it. It's really a specialty. Some places call it South Indian filter coffee. Some places call it, they just call it Indian filter coffee. It's a pretty unique way to have a cup of coffee. It takes a little more involvement than just pouring into a French press or doing something kind of weird like that. So really what it entails is you're going to start off with very finely ground coffee. This is going to be coffee powder almost. It's going to have the consistency of almost like powdered sugar. It's very, very finely ground, and that's what you want with a coffee like this. You want this coffee to be powdery if you try and sift it through your fingers. So you're going to start off with this contraption here. For those listening at home, it's a cylinder with the top part comes apart. That top part is where the coffee goes into. It has a strainer above it that the coffee is pressed by, and then a cover, of course, to let the coffee steep. So what you do is with an Indian filter coffee, it takes a little bit of preparation. One of the things you can do is you can half prep it the night before. So what you do is you take that very finely ground coffee, anywhere between 3 to 5 tablespoons is usually pretty good. Throw it into the top, and you're going to pack it down. Yes, it's very much William Joseph Roberts. It's very much like doing a Thai coffee. Right. So, which we're going to cover soon, as well as Vietnamese coffee. So, but I figured India is a good place to start. I love the band Bloody Wood, so I was listening to their music this morning, and I was like, I'd really like to cover some of the Indian coffees that you can get out there that are really fun to make. So you take the 3 to 5 tablespoons of powdered coffee, put that in the top, pack it down so it's flat, put the strainer on top. Once the strainer is on top, you're going to take about a cup of boiling water. You're going to pour it into that, cover it, and then just let it sit for a bit. That water is going to filter through. You're going to just let it do its thing, anywhere between, some people say 10 minutes, and other people half an hour. William Joseph Roberts, yeah, those guys are freaking awesome. Yeah, Ari, Ari, Ari. Yeah, that song is tight. I love that song. If you haven't checked out Bloodywood, you can find them on YouTube. Really cool band from India. Mixes both Hindi and English with hard rock and hip hop. It's a lot of fun. So back to our coffee. Let that steep anywhere between 10 minutes to half an hour, depending on taste. You're going to have what a lot of people call a decoction. You're going to have some very, very potent coffee. It's going to be about a tablespoon or so in the bottom of this. A lot of that moisture is going to get trapped in the coffee above, and then your tablespoon and a half, 2 tablespoons maybe. So what you're then going to do is you're going to go to our next piece of equipment, which are these two. They're not really serving bowls; they're mixing bowls. And the idea here is you're going to prep your next piece of the. Whoop! No, we don't want to do that. You're going to prep. Things got weird for a minute. You're going to press. You're going to pour into the center piece. And for those listening at home, you have a wide bowl. It can be made of brass or steel. And what you're going to do is in the smaller cup that is sitting inside of a larger cup, you are going to pour about a teaspoon of powdered sugar, and then about a tablespoon or so of that concoction that you got made from going through the sifter, and then about a quarter of a cup of hot milk, boiled milk. You can use that as well. Get it nice and hot. You're going to pour that all into the center, and then back and forth. You're basically going to pour one into another until you get that sugar very finely mixed. You don't want big bubbles of sugar floating around in your coffee. You want it really finely mixed. It's a smooth drinking coffee. The milk and the sugar balance out that extreme bitter taste of the coffee decoction that mixes very, very well. It's a lot of fun, but it does take some prep work. I've seen some people who prep the decoction the night before, which is that concentrated coffee. It's a lot of fun. All of the images that you see here are from vendors on Amazon who where you can get these items. You can go to your local coffee shop and ask for South Indian or Indian coffee, and it's just a fun way to make a coffee and try this out so that it's not just your average everyday. Lauren Moore is joining us from Facebook. She's like, well, when did you first try this? I could tell you, but then they'd revoke my security clearance, and like it says on all the posters on all the bases I've ever been, every time you violate OPSEC, God kills a kitten. So if you get the chance, please try an Indian coffee, South Indian coffee, however you want to refer to it. It's a lot of fun. It's a really neat way to try coffee from a different perspective without trying to get so in the weeds where you're having to handcraft a lot of this. And from vying around the different sites, you can get one of these sets together for really under $50. So if you're looking for an inexpensive way or to kind of play with coffee in a new light, yeah, give it a try. It's a lot of fun. And speaking of, bridging those cultural gaps or bridging any gap, really. So we're getting into our concept, and you've done it. You've written your first book, and the numbers are in. It's fun. People like it. They're reading it. They get so stoked about your story that they want number two. They want that second book. Luckily, you have it ready to go. You can launch it in a timely manner. You're feeding the need. But then the question gets posed to you, and you don't know what's next. And that question is, you ever consider doing a role-playing game for your property? Now, what do you do next when somebody asks that kind of question? Now, I've worked on both sides of those pages. I, since 2004, have owned Hazard Studio, which produces role-playing game products, and I've also written a little bit. And for this Coffee and Concepts, I want to go from you're a writer to you want to indulge that gaming itch. So how do you go about that? First thing that you want to do from going from pages to dice is, before you decide to link your intellectual property to a particular gaming system, try playing some games. See what's fun for you and what level of involvement you want in a game. Now, this usually comes from 3 different levels of play. You have light play, where the rules are easy and often in just a handful of pages. It's usually a quick read. It's light rule systems are often focused more on story than rules adjudication. So it tends to be more narrative. There's less, you have to do this, and more of, tell me what you're doing when this happens. So things are less with the adjudicator, be it dice, cards, psychic impressions, you name it. Then you get your medium type of games, which is kind of really encompasses the huge majority of game systems out there. This is going to be a good balance between story and rules. The game flow is usually figured out within a few sessions for new players, and experienced players are going to come along very fast with this kind of rule system. Things are codified. Much of the interaction kind of is left to how you want to play the game. but the rules are not just going to be, easily thrown aside. So you're going to have much of the interaction codified, but it leaves enough for your story. Like I said, a good majority of the games that you're going to play at the table fall into this category. Then you get your heavy games. These are often referred to as simulationists. These are dominated by rules. This style of play usually tries to adjudicate the gameplay at the table with a rule for everything. Narrative will often be driven by the rules, as there will be tables and charts and tons of math. So there's going to be a steep learning curve with a heavy rule set. So once you kind of get your mind wrapped around the kind of game you want to link to your IP, next step is to talk to some developers, see what's involved in producing a game, because you're going to want to know how big of an investment you want to put into this. Some people might just want this for the fans, so it's something to hand out in a newsletter or something like that. It's going to be light, quick, fun, couple of images, some rules, allows your friends at the table for a quick night when that one guy didn't show up and you don't have enough pairs at the table for cards. You pull this out. It's a fun way to engage in your favorite IP. Something for the fans to buy. If you're looking to go that route, a good way to go is a complete RPG supplement in a box or a single book as a one-time buy for fans of the series. There are a lot of examples of this out there. And if you go to Amazon, stuff like Drive-Through RPG and some of the various e-tailers, you're going to find a good chunk of this out there. And then you got something for the fans to buy and grow with. A great example of this was back in the day, the Star Wars role-playing game by West End Games. It was an RPG centered around the first three movies, but then as the line of novels advanced, expanded, and encompassed so much more than the movies, the role-playing game grew with it. So it constantly gave a steady thing to buy beside the growing IP. So once you got that kind of figured out, dig in to decide whether you want to do this yourself or hire somebody, because it is a lot of work. The average rule book is anywhere between 100 to 200 pages. Most people prefer a rule book that has various illustrations throughout. The usual has a tendency to be at least one illustration every 2 to 5 pages. It's a lot of work, especially when you start getting into the math, game balance, all these things. So you have to make these decisions, and then remember, at the end of the day, the point of the game is to give people who are interested in your property and your genre an opportunity to play through their own stories in your world. This allows a level of immersion you don't have to worry about with conflicting IP. So those adventures, those stories, those things that happen are things that happen at the table, away from your writing, so that it's not having to be constantly sourced, written in, tied to. You see this a lot with comic book properties, which is why they have massive editorial staff to make sure everything lines up. So this gives your fans a great way to experience what you've written and the worlds that you've created right at their own table for their own enjoyment. Going back to some of the comments, William Joseph Roberts was saying that he games a lot of his stories, but spending my time writing with my worlds is more effective while licensing the universe to somebody else to develop the game system. Oh, cool. So you're already doing that. Right on, man. Oh, yeah, John Evans. I'm really enjoying playing Magic Tech Chronicles from Chris Fox at the moment. I'd say it's middle complexity and system, good fun. One of the other podcasts that I routinely bribe my way onto is the Banff podcast from Mike Lafferty. And we interviewed Chris and had a really great time talking to him. You can find that right on YouTube. A lot of fun. Alexander Biernat, I hope I said that correctly. Dear Lord. I played that Star Wars one. It was basically a heavily modified and skinned D&D 3.5 edition. No, not that one. The one before that one. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the Saga edition, and yeah, you want the one owned by West End Games, not the one owned by Wizards of the Coast. But yeah, so yep. There's a lot out there that you can use to kind of draw in your players, draw in your readers, draft them into a version of your story for their own table, their own enjoyment, and their own fun. It gives them that sense of belonging into your world without you having to worry about that story inclusivity where their stories have to play into your stories and back and forth and over again. And a clever writer of fiction who has their toe in the RPG realm will write their RPGs in a way that travels parallel to their story without ever crashing into it, but still allows for the gameplay and fun that really, really, really makes either one of those properties, be it fiction or tabletop gaming, an interesting way to spend your evening. I just wanted to say thanks to everybody for coming out this morning. Really appreciate it. I could do a whole series on this that would go crazy. And if you want me to do more about tying in fiction to gaming, my next show will probably be going the other way. If you've done role-playing games for a number of years and you've been thinking about doing fiction, which some companies are starting to do now, how does that go about, and what's a good way to tackle that in the future? So thank you very much for coming out. Just remember that we got Josh, Scott, and Chuck on Mondays at some time, as they showed this week when they interviewed Doc Spears, and get your Monday fix of live with Keystroke Media. Of course, Tuesdays we try to drill into Coffee and Concepts, where we try to bring you the fun coffee and an interesting concept to try and start your morning. Don't forget, we had Lauren and Kayleen on Thursdays doing their thing, bringing the best of the writing community in so that we may learn how to advance our writing into the next level. That's on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. I don't know what it is their time. Sorry, East Coast. And then last but not least, Josh Gayu doing long form storytelling. They just did a really interesting show about the old 1980 something movie, Enemy Mine, with Dennis Quaid and Louis Gossett Jr., an old science fiction classic that I think is really relatable to today. Thanks again for coming out. And don't forget, like and subscribe on YouTube, right? We're on a push to get 1,000 viewers, right? So that we can kind of take this to the next level and give you even more and interesting, diverse, creative content in your channel. You hit like, you hit subscribe, ding that bell so that you get notified every time we go live. Guys, thank you very much. Have a great day. Be cool, be safe, and be well. Have fun.